story, and then invitation for the keynote speeches.
Perfect. I will not take any of it.
No, I believe I believe that you know.
No, because I will not talk about the session itself. I will just say thanks to our partners.
Okay.
Because I will show you what it is. So right now, right.
I don't need any presentation fully. So someone will manage this.
So that's why I wanted to show. See, what will happen is we can. These are the partners. I will change it in a moment. So we have all of the slides in a sequence.
Okay.
First,
who is changing the slides?
here.
Okay, and we posting here or there? Where do you
Once I turn this on, everything will be there. What is here?
Okay.
Okay, so what I will do is I will just say thank you to the partners, mention about Capgemini recap stuff, and then I will invite the dean to say a few words. After she's done, I will invite Pawel to take the session forward. Then you can do the introduction and invite the first speaker. So the next slide is for the speaker. So your slides are in the line.
Yeah.
And then there will be a graphic like this for the next speaker. Which
So the sequence is right. We have a
Yes.
Monika, then we have a Kamil, and then we have a Kasia.
Exactly, yeah. So we have the slides of Monika, then we have the graphic with Kamil, then the slides of Kamil, then the graphic for Kasia, and then the slides of Kasia. And then once that is done, there will be a slide like this again, and then you can invite everybody on the panel discussion. Once you're done with the panel discussion, then you can just say thank you, and then I will conclude with the conference by thanking everybody.
Okay.
Sounds good?
Sounds great.
Okay, this is yours.
This is mine.
Maybe they were
Do we
actually
have
here.
some better maybe plate for
Yes, I actually have it.
So then, because I won't sit here, I think this is not like it doesn't look so fancy. Wygląda profesjonalnie, nie można teraz zapnąć.
Thank you all for coming. We'll just wait for a few minutes. We are waiting for a couple of guests to come, and then we will start. Thanks.
So, no, I don't know what you want to know.
Because those are used. And the glasses are actually.
Professional. Wiadomo.
Where would you like to sit? Because I will not be. I don't remember how it was. So, Pawel. I don't have the other glasses right now, so. Okay, Monika is here. Okay, Pawel. So. Okay, let's settle down, please. Great. Thank you so much for everybody for joining. This is the final keynote session, and I'm glad to see all of you here. It's been an intense few months, few days, and it all comes down to this. So I'm glad that you are here at the almost the full end of the conference. Before we start, I would like to thank all of our co-organizers, the Department of Computational Social Science, where I come from, the Faculty of Management, of course, where Kraft is, the Wrocław University of Science and Technology, where we all are right now, our National Center for National and International Relations, who did such a great effort to put a lot of things together with myself and the team, Academia Europea, because we had some amazing speakers from them, the Students' Union, who co-organized or actually organized with our support or with our collaboration the Craft Inspiration and Set University. There are some other partners who have really helped us quite a bit, coming from the University of Wrocław, International Sociological Association. We had some really interesting and really fine 3D printed trophies for our Craft 180 participants. Due to technical error, they will not get 1 but 2 trophies. So we gave them like a token trophy, and they get the real trophy later on, because technical faults prevented the printing of the trophy. We have the Association of Top 500 Innovators, Startup Wrocław and Arav, especially with Paulina. Maciej was not here, but Krisha, who has been amazing. Like, I think she's more tired than I am, so thank you for that. Hampton, who gave really good hampers to our winners. One of the winners got a 1-night stay at Hampton with breakfast, along with their partner. David is here. Kamil, this is the guy who got the winner of PhD. And Capgemini, who has really helped us quite a lot, starting with Michał Adamski, who's also our advisory board member. And we have 2 great speakers, Monika and James. James had a really wonderful talk in the morning. Now we have Monika, who is really charged up. Stick, Kay and Solvero, who have been our community and promotional partners. Radio Luz as well. Zona 71, so we got some tickets we are going to enjoy with the team later on. And Aquapark, who gave some gifts to our winners as well. Right, so before we start, I will invite the amazing moderator for today's panel, but before I do that, I want to mention about Capgemini's recap platform. So everything that is all the keynote speakers are saying is being live summarized with their AI platform. And also we will use the transcripts later on to create some resources that can be useful for different stakeholders. So everything that is being said is then being utilized over the next few months to create some things. So if you would scan the QR code, you will get the access to the summaries on your phone even after directly. Right, so the dean is supposed to join us again, but she's still in a meeting with some people. She will join us and give us a message, so we will hear from her a bit later. Right, so without further ado, the final session is about crafting responsible innovation technology and technology. I know that Pawel has a great introduction to it, so I will not spoil it. And I would like to invite Pawel Sawicki. He's the executive transformation leader at BPX. Today he's the moderator. In some days we have our PMG group conference, so he is a speaker there. So if you love him today, please come again for that conference so that you can hear him for a longer period of time. So this is like a teaser for what's the next to come. So Pawel, I would like to please invite you on stage and take the session forward. Thank you.
Hi guys, and thanks for that amazing intro. So I'm, as has been spoken, amazing guy. And I'm happy to welcome you on this panel. So today, the word of the day is responsibility. And today's panel, we will try to focus on the responsibility in the technological world, but not only. We will talk about the few aspects of that word. When I was a kid, responsibility always meant some troubles. So it was straightforward connected to do your homework or tell the truth or please do not break something expensive at home. And then when I grow up, I see that we often prefer to discuss responsibility after. We always focus on the responsibility after scale, after development, and occasionally after some scandals. This is the point where we should bring to the discussion responsibility at the beginning. Today, we have amazing speakers. We will take this word from the 3 different angles. We will discuss about the responsibility from the AI and implementation side. We will discuss responsibility from the investment and institutional development side. And of course, we will discuss this word from the science and social dynamics. At the end of the story, we need to remember that the responsible innovate does not mean innovate fast. Responsible innovate means innovate in the way when at the end we can say that our innovation deserve trust. From the beginning, I have very big pleasure to invite our first keynote speaker is Monika Byrtek. Monika is an AI philosopher of Capgemini AI's Future Lab, focused on the safe and ethical implementation of AI. Her background combines philosophy, innovation, data analysis. She holds a Master of Science degree in philosophy from University of Warsaw and MBA in innovation and data analysis from SWPS University, delivered in partnership with Institute of Computer Science of Polish Academy of Science and Woodbury School of Business in the US. Monika, welcome for a keynote speech.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to be here. And as it was said, I studied philosophy, and my title says something about philosophy. So how can I start? There is no other way from asking what innovation is. Can I start differently by starting from a definition? Probably not. But don't worry, it's not going to be a long philosophical discussion about innovation. I did something much easier. I look at the Webster Dictionary. And Webster Dictionary says that innovation is a new idea, method, or device. It's the introduction of something new. What we can see in that definition is that it doesn't say anything about good or bad, useful, responsible. What it says, that it is a novelty. So I would like to start with certain assumption that innovation is neither good nor bad. It just is something new. And I know it might make some of you feel a little bit uncomfortable, so I will add, however, because there is a time when we realize that innovation has gone too far, and in what moment we are realizing it. I create a very small framework. Don't get too attached to it. It can look very different if you decide to focus on it. When we're realizing that innovation goes so far, too far, or where we're actually trying to say that an innovation is good or bad. So there is an intention of a creator, and the intention might be to make something good, but it also may be to make something cruel. It may be to make something pretty. Why not? Steve Jobs, his idea was about making pretty innovation. So innovation does not have to be, responsible or useful. It can be any other adjectives. And the intention, not of an innovation, but intention of a creator makes it good, bad, useful, pretty, or whatever you choose to do. And then there is a second stage when we can see it more clearly. It's the moment of implementation. And that's where the society that receives the innovation can actually start saying, hey, is it good? Is it bad? We are going to judge it and see how does it work. If the phase of implementation goes well and it is adapted in a small scale, then scaling starts. And the wider adoptions is happening. We can see what happened in innovation over a time on a greater scale. And also new things might be revealed. Maybe the innovation start being used for a different purpose that it was created. And that also may cause some additional issues or opportunities. Why not? And that also is the moment where we're saying that innovation is good or bad. But bear in mind that those are people who deciding if that's good or bad. Not necessarily the thing, the innovation, the novelty itself. And we also can see some side effects in that stage, and we can say, hey, is it good or is it bad? And then the regulations came at the end. I put it especially about the end, because when we're talking about innovation, about novelty, we have to remember that when it is happen in someone's mind, and it's a true novelty, there is no regulation about it. Think about the car. First we have a car, and then we have rules and regulation how to behave on the road. It wasn't the other way around. And also, think about AI, or social media. First we get the thing, and now we are starting to think, okay, maybe certain laws and regulations are needed. So why are we focusing today on a responsible innovation? Because when it goes to AI, we need to know that AI systems works at much greater scale than any innovation before. And the scaling is happening much faster than ever before, as well as AI has much greater autonomy and authority than anything before. So the consequences are harder to predict and are harder to undo. If something goes wrong, it will go wrong only once. There will be no options for redoing. And we have seen that. We have seen that already. A lot of bad things already happen with AI, starting from biased algorithms in large language models that, for example, pre-assumably stereotype Mexicans into low-paying jobs and women into secretarial roles. We saw it in happenings in banking. We saw what happens with hallucination and deepfakes and how this can threaten demographic processes. And we also saw how chatbots encourage harmful behaviors, not only with the children, kids, and teenagers, but also within adults. The newest data shows that first sign of burnouts are coming from people who embrace AI the most. It's very interesting. We did our research in Capgemini. It's an upcoming report. Probably in May, we will introduce it to everyone, to the public. But 87% of the respondents have experienced an ethical related concern with AI usage in their organizations since 2022. That's not, 1, 2 people have some ethical issues with that. Maybe they are too moral. No, 87% of our respondents. And there was 1,200 responders. And what is the most interesting, we can talk about those issues, but let's turn our eyes for a second on the creators. And I don't want to say my favorite, because it is not really my favorite one, but it is the one quote that actually reveals something to us. And from that point of view, it's very interesting. The co-founder of Google, in a podcast, I think it was February, he said, and I quote, "But all models tend to do better if you threaten them with physical violence. People feel weird about that, so we don't talk about that." How do you feel about the fact that language models behave much better if you threaten them with a physical violence? Is that the world we really want to live in? And when we see all of this happen, what's coming next? The next thing that's coming is we're losing trust. We as a user, we stop trusting the innovation. We stop trusting the next shiny things we're getting. That means no scalability. But let's not get confused. Trust is not the same of liking. Because, maybe I do like from time to time talk to a language model, but does it really mean I trust it? Not necessary. And trust is not absence of risk. I still might know the risks when I'm getting into the car. I know there are other people on the roads. I know things might happen, even if my car was checked properly. I pass a driving license, so should be okay. But I still do know the risk. I still know that something might happen, even though I trust that if I get in a car, I can drive myself from A to B. And the car, most probably, will not fail me. So trust is not absence of a risk. Rachel Bosman, she is a thinker of trust and innovation. She said that trust is the confidence relationship with the unknown. Trust as a confidence relationship with an I know. I know that something might happen and I might not even be able to say what this something is, but I do have confident relationship because of all other data and experience I had so far. So let's try to put it all together: trust, responsibility, and AI. I want to share with you a taxonomy, something that we put out together in AI Futures Lab, how responsible AI might be created. So we have outcome, we have trust. Trust as a state where the user is comfortable with the unknown and unpredictable presence in the system. And this outcome comes from a discipline that we would call responsible AI in that case. And what would be responsible AI discipline? It's building AI that is intentionally designed, works well, and is deployed and governed to promote beneficial, fair, and accountable outcomes for individuals, organizations, and society. But to get to that point, we need to think, okay, what we need to do. And there are 5 things that we creators can do, and I think we users can expect from the creators. First of all, we should maybe talk about ethical AI, or AI that adhere to our ethics. AI that is aligned to the values we are having. And I'm not going to say this and that values, and we have to remember about it, that's this and that. But there are some things that everyone should look at about fair, about biases, maybe about not harming human beings. There is no one set of values. And I think there shouldn't be, because we have different contexts, different culture involved, and we shouldn't ignore that. Especially when we're talking about scalability for the whole world, we need to take that into consideration. But ethical AI is the one that is aligned to the values. Then we should talk about compliant AI, which is AI that is aligned to the rules and regulations. And that might be an issue, especially if we're talking about, area that maybe the rules and regulation are not really there. But we can already start to think about, okay, are we able to audit the system? Are we able to control the system? Are there things in a system that talk about compliance that we can already know about? The next one would be security. It's about AI that it cannot be manipulated and it cannot do the wrong thing. So what about data privacy? What about knowing that, some other people will not get into the system to use it against us? The fourth one would be about reliability. We want a system that we can count on, that the output will be consistent. Maybe not necessary every single time something else, especially if we think about having AI in our company. We want it to be reliable and work well. And the fifth one that I'm not going to focus too much, because this is something that is emerging as AI systems are starting to be something bigger. Aligned AI would be about having AI that is aligned to our conventional wisdom and behavioral norms. So that is something really that will most probably might happen in the future. And I think if we focus on those 4 things so far, so ethics, compliance, security, and reliability, we might have something that people can trust, that can help to build their trust. However, I think there is something important to remember. Because when you hear about that, you might ask me, okay, but if I have to think about ethics, about all the values of every single person who's going to use it, if I have to think about laws and regulation, that I will never get my invention out there. I will be stuck in those phases when I have to, forget about fun of invention, of creating invention, but think about all of that. I want to focus us on something else. Responsibility does not slow innovation. It enables trust, and trust enables scale. Responsible innovation are not the blockage to the innovation. Chinese minister gave a great metaphor. You would not go and sit in a car where brake pedal is not working. The brake pedal allows you to go faster and to drive smarter. So you need something that if anything goes wrong, you are able to stop and rethink. If you treat responsibility as a checklist at the end of your product, the moment when you're just about to give it to society and now, oh wait, let's do our checklist. Well, that might fail, because what if you will find out at this moment that it's not safe, it's not adherent to the laws and regulation, oh wow, the main goal of that is actually to kill people. There was a study done by IBM, and the response in the study shows that if we apply ethics to at the beginning of process of creation, then we reduce the rework of project by 42%. 42, it's not a small number. To reduce the rework, but almost a half of the percent. So applying ethics, law, regulation, security from the beginning to our creation allows us to go faster, actually, and bring us to the place where we don't have to redo the same thing and rethink about it. So responsibility is a process, not just a checklist at the end. And responsibility is also a future criteria capability. People are and people will be asking about ethics, about compliance, and all those stuff even more. It's not, a shiny star at the end that you can show to people and be like, hey, we did it ethically because we say it's ethical. No, not necessary. People will be questioning, will be asking questions, and ask you, how can you prove that it is ethical, it is legal, it is aligned with law and regulation, and it is secure? And I will give you one example that ethics is not something, that no one cares. I don't know if you remember, it was end of February, I think, and Anthropic and US government have an issue. Have an issue about guardrails on AI. It was about two guardrails, one related to mass killing AI and the other related to surveillance. And at the end, on Friday, Anthropic says, no, we're not going to do that. Have you read what Anthropic actually says? Anyone? Have you read this response of Anthropic? Okay, so in the response, Anthropic gives basically one argument where they're not going to do that, and they're not going to sign the contract with US governance, with actually US governance army. And that's a moral argument. They're saying, with a good conscience, we are not going to do that. They're not saying because of the money, because of the politics. Okay, let's not be naive. That's also an issue. But in a statement, they're saying, with a good conscience, we are not going to do that. And that caused the effect. People start joining their apps more than any other. So it's not something that, someone asked and, oh, maybe it's good to have it. It actually shows that our society wants responsible product. My boss, Dr. Mark Roberts, he said something very interesting. We live in a time when almost anyone can create a system, yet very few can build one that is safe, robust, compliant, and ethical. Think about it. We really live in a time when you don't have to finish Polytechnica to build an AI system. That's not the times anymore. Anyone can do it. Anyone can prompt and build something. But yet, very few can build one that is safe, robust, compliant, ethical, and can have a real impact. So my question to you is, are you going to build a system that anyone can do? Or are you going to build something that is safe, robust, compliant, and ethical? Thank you.
Thank you, Monika. That was a great presentation. We see humanity behind the technology. I think this is very important nowadays. Guys, we started very strong. We started from the ethical perspective, but this is just beginning. Let me introduce our next speaker, is Kamil. Kamil is a senior regional representative for Poland at the European Investment Fund, where he acts as an ambassador and promoter of EU initiatives in Poland. He worked previously in European Investment Fund commitment across 15 countries worth 2.5 billion euro, which is quite impressive, before working for National Bank of Poland, the World Bank, and United Nations. He held a PhD from Warsaw School of Economy with part of his research on Harvard University. He's a great PhD, he's a great presenter, and he likes himself called as a half man, half pierogi. Let's welcome Kamil.
I think this was the coolest introduction I had, so thank you for that. Can I see? Yes. We talk about technology. Let's see if I'm not defeated by technology today. Deepfake. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, deepfake. Guys, can you hear me well? Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. First of all, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to this very, very interesting and prestigious event. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So, how do I do this? So if I click here, amazing. So, crafting responsible innovation and technology. Well, let me begin with a confession. And the confession is that to the horror of my marketing and PR team, I shall not use this opportunity to sell what is European Investment Fund and to sell what is European Investment Bank. I am not here today to give a corporate presentation. I'm here to make a broader point. When we talk about responsible innovation and technology, it is in my opinion that Europe's real advantage is not that it innovates more loudly than the US, but it is trying to innovate more responsibly. And that matters, because today, technology is no longer just about gadgets. And I really liked what my predecessor said about, everybody can create a system even without the proper education. If I may add some personal observation, I think some people can create something that will have impact. Yeah, but might not the impact that they wanted or that we wanted. Just personal, please don't get this, I don't want to be rude. So technology today is no longer just about gadget, apps, or convenience. Technology shapes power. It shapes access. It shapes opportunity. It shapes trusts. It shapes democracy. And it shapes resilience. And it also shapes who is included and who is not included. And once technology starts behaving like an infrastructure, responsibility can no longer be optional. So my argument today is the following. The European Union has, in important ways, built a more responsible model of innovation and technology governance than we see in the United States. Now, that does not mean that Europe is faster. It does not mean that Europe is better at scaling companies, and it certainly does not mean that the US is not innovative. It's quite the opposite, to be frank. To be very honest, actually, US remains extraordinary proficient at turning ideas into companies, companies into platforms, and platforms into global power. But I believe this is not the only question that matters anymore. The real question, or the question I like to ask, is when innovation becomes powerful enough to shape society itself, who is more responsible in the way they govern it? And I think Europe is more responsible. But before I defend this claim, let me also follow the footstep of my predecessor, and let's talk a little bit about some definitions. And here I'm going to talk about the working definition of what is responsibility. And in the context of today's presentation, I like to think about responsibility or responsible innovation as designing, financing, deploying, and governing innovation in a way that is human-centered, risk-aware, accountable across life cycles, open to democratic challenges, and aligned with long-term societal benefits rather than only short-term technical or commercial success. For me, responsible does not mean anti-innovation. It means innovation that remains governable after it becomes powerful. There is a book I really invite you to read. It's written by Reid Hoffman, Super Agency. Question to the audience. Anybody heard about the book or anybody heard about Reid Hoffman? You did? All right. Exactly. Yes. And the book? Yes. All right. So I would share my personal view on this, and let's see if this actually resonates with yours as well. I think, so any people who didn't hear that, the co-author of this book is, classical case of a billionaire, tech billionaire from the United States, very much engaged in many different tech ventures, and he was one of the founders of LinkedIn, which is essentially Facebook for professional. And I invite you all to have your own LinkedIn profile, by the way. It's very powerful for career development. But what is my point here is that this book, in my opinion, is, it's talking about how AI and new technology is going to empower people and how too much regulation can actually stop the progress. This book does not talk about Europe. It talks about how much there is even too much regulation in the US, actually. And for me, that book is a fantastic tool for all of the tech enthusiasts, for all of the people who would like to lobby to public policymakers, to politicians, to reduce any regulatory or governmental oversights on AI and new technologies. And the premise of this book, if I can put this in one word, is that according to the authors, and that's my interpretation of that book, is that optimism is a public policy, meaning let's not worry, or let's worry very little about what can go wrong when we implement new technologies. Let's ask the question, what if everything goes right? Yes? Do you agree with, yeah, that's what's in this book. So this is an intellectual difference, cultural difference between the approach that we see in the US and the approach we see in Europe. Now, responsible innovation is something that we can craft. And here, you've seen the presentation, so you know what's coming. I'm going to, you know what CRAFT stands for, yes? As for this conference. Anybody can shout what CRAFT stands for? Not you, not you. Yeah, okay, sorry, damn it. Yeah, okay. But today, I am actually going to steal the acronym to walk you through a model of thinking that I like to propose. How can we frame an assessment when we think about whether a new innovation or technology, and I say new innovation is always new in a way, but innovation does not need to be confined just into technological space. We can also talk, for instance, about financial innovation as well. So it goes beyond that, according to my interpretation. But I'm going to steal the CRAFT acronym. And we're going to do this the following. We're going to talk about CRAFT, and we're going to start with the letter C. And letter C for me is citizens before convenience. What I mean by that is this is, in my opinion, the first strength of the European approach. And that is that the thinking begins with the citizen. It means that, for instance, privacy is not just a product feature. It is a right. Safety is not just a reputational issue. It is a duty. Transparency is not just nice to have. It is part of the legitimacy. And here the roles of the European institutions are very visible. As you may know, the European Commission proposes a given rule book, the European Parliament, the Council turns those proposals into the law, then you have the network of national regulators, EU bodies, and all different agents are involved in not only shaping a new regulation or supervision, but also implementing this. And here, a very powerful example that you probably know of is GDPR, or RODO, as we say in Poland. Many people complain about this, but when I speak with some of my colleagues in the US, they wish they would have RODO. Not maybe in all of the aspects of this, but because this actually protects the little guy by giving them some of the rights that you can ask a provider to delete your delete your data, for instance. You don't have it as easy in the US, at least not in all of the US states. We see the same thing in finance. In capital markets, ordinary people are often the weaker party. They have less information, less expertise, and less bargaining power than the institutions selling complex financial products and financial engineering. This is why MiFID II matters. It's one of the regulations in Poland, in the European Union. It is one of the clearest examples of the EU trying to protect the small investors, not by banning markets, but on making markets fairer and more governable. Here, MiFID and MiFIR, in my opinion, strengthen, harmonize investor protection, which is your protection, in areas such as sustainability, suitability, and appropriateness, product governance, disclosure of charges and costs, and best execution. The point is, even in finance, so this is nothing potentially directly related to tech, Europe is saying, if markets are to serve society, then ordinary investors and ordinary people need to be treated fairly, informed properly, and protected against abuse of complexity and asymmetry of information. Let's move to the letter R, which for me is risk-based rules. Now, this is the second feature of Europe, which I understand that it tries to regulate things in proportion to risk. What I mean by that is that this is a much more intelligent model than either a blanket restriction or a total laissez-faire. For example, a calculator and an AI model affecting access to jobs are not the same. A basic consumer app and a connected product that may expose millions of users to cyber vulnerabilities are not the same. A simple recommendation tool and a system shaping healthcare, finance, or education are not the same. So, EU is trying to regulate and supervise things in proportion to risk and exposure. And the clearest example for me is the AI Act that you might have heard about. Now, there's a lot of complaint about this, and I'm not saying these things are perfect. At EU, we make probably every possible mistake that you can imagine, but we learn from it, and we push through, and we implement improvements. But for me, for instance, AI Act is extremely interesting because it shows a very European architecture, not invent first, improvise later, but classify risks, assign duties, build institutions such as the new AI office that we have, and try to reduce predictable harm before it scales. And this is where the contrast becomes especially visible. For example, Europe is moving more decisively than the US against the use of AI for non-consensual sex content, including deepfakes and content and child sexual abuse materials. Now, the US has also recently taken steps to reduce this. There's a Take It Down Act, which criminalizes intentional disclosure of non-consensual depictions. And while this is a meaningful progress, the experts are very clear it is not enough, and they point out to AI Act from Europe as a good guideline of how it should be actually implemented. Now, we see the same philosophical differences also in medicine. Europe is often criticized for being slower when you have new innovation, new medicines, in authorizing new drugs than the US. But then there's a number of research that shows that the medicine that is available in Europe is less faulty, has better dosages, and the spectrum of potentially harmful substances available over the counter is reduced in the EU versus Europe. The same thing we can also see in automotives. If you have a car, the same model of car, BMW Z3 for instance, the same model of car will be slightly different in Europe than in the US. And chances are that more safety nets will be implemented because they are required in Europe than in the US. And then this is not just philosophical debate. We see this in the data. According to Eurostat, per 1 million inhabitants in the EU, you have 50 road accidents resulting in death casualties. In the US, you have 5 times as much. Now let's move to the next, which is for me accountability across the life cycle. Now this is the third thing, and one of the biggest weaknesses of the old tech worldview was that the idea that responsibility fades after launch of a product or a tool. The rationale was this: design the tool, release the tool, scale the tool, and if something goes wrong, apologize later. But if a system has power, the responsibility must travel with that power. We need to ask the questions such as who tested it, who documented this, who understood the foreseeable risks, who remains accountable where failure emerges, who updates it, and who mitigates the downstream damage. Again, the AI Act is a useful framework here, because it is not just about banning a few extreme example uses of AI that I mentioned related to sexuality or child. It is also about general governance, documentation, transparency, risk management, and oversight. Moving to the next letter, F, which is fair competition. Now, the fourth element is often ignored in ethical debates, but for me, it is very essential. A technology ecosystem is not truly responsible if a handful of dominant firms control access, visibility, distribution, data, and scale. So if you have the hegemons, and they actually create a semi-monopoly or oligopoly. Now, because then, innovation may still happen, but it happens inside a highly concentrated architecture of power. And Europe has been more willing than the US to see this not just as an antitrust issue, but also as a societal issue. This is also about whether markets remain open enough for challenges, for startups, and for smaller innovators to compete. And last but not least is T, which is for me trust-enabled investments and adoption. If citizens do not trust systems, adoptions slow. If markets do not trust governance, risk premium rises. If public institutions do not trust deployment, procurement slows. If societies do not trust innovators, politics becomes more defensive. And here, in my opinion, Europe's institutional model is especially interesting and strong. For example, under the current EU budget framework, we estimate that around 2 trillion euros is to be channeled via different programs such as InvestEU to support innovation, competitiveness, resilience, but also social investments and skills along sustainable infrastructure, research, innovation, digitalization, and SMEs. But all of these are extremely well controlled. That money is being checked and reviewed by dedicated institutions to ensure that the projects are actually in compliance with the public policy goals, whether they are ethical, where we say that something is actually green, whether we say if something is beneficial for society, if it actually benefits for society, etc. And this is a very European idea. It is not simply spend public money, but use public credibility, public law, and public guarantees to crowd in private capital. So, crafting, if we use crafting the way I suggested it, responsible innovation and technology seems more relevant for the Europeans than for the US. So we cannot afford to lose European innovation to and technology to the US. And this is exactly what is happening right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess everybody have heard by now about the famous Draghi report. So Professor Draghi made a diagnosis more than a year ago, actually, where he was reviewing what are the key challenges for the competitiveness of Europe and why are we lagging behind. Number of takeaways were presented, but one specifically interesting thing that I want you to remember is this. Everybody understands what is a unicorn. In finance, I mean, yes? I'm not saying unicorn. So a unicorn, right, is a super successful technological company, I'm simplifying here a lot, that reached a valuation of at least $1 billion. So this is a super successful company with probably some extremely disruptive technology, with probably super talented founders, and already some money behind this. And these founders are already probably rich folks, and they will probably like to redeploy that capital to set up new companies or new VC funds. We like that. But what we don't like is that according to Draghi report, in the last decade, 1/3 of all of the unicorns from Europe, meaning 1/3 of all of the most successful technological companies in Europe, moved from European Union to the US. Now, Draghi lists a number of reasons why this is happening. One of the reasons is that you have fragmented markets. If you are a startup, you need to set up many different legal entities to actually serve many different markets within Europe. It is difficult to secure financing for scalability. It is difficult to do many different things. And there's a number of proposals that he's listing how this can be addressed. But my point is that the immigration of the European startups, the successful ones, especially to Europe, is not just about ethics and the fact that then we are losing these people who can champion the European way of crafting innovation and technology. This is also about security. I don't need to, repeat. You see what's happening. You see the tension between Europe and the US. You see how these things can quickly escalate and how different past alliances can come into question. So we need to change that, and there are things that are actually being developed at pan-European level. And the first thing that is actually being done right now is the Regime 28. As you know, we have 27 countries right now in the European Union. So the Regime 28 is a play on words where we say we create a 28th national, it's actually pan-European regime just for startups, meaning that if you want to set up a startup company, you would have just one regime that would work pan-Europeanly. You will not need to create 27 different entities. Now, this also is called as EU Incorporated. This is something that the industry of startups and venture capital was pushing for years. And this year, von der Leyen, during the World Economic Forum, announced that this is happening. I'm extremely happy about this news, and now we can only have our fingers crossed that this will actually be implemented as soon as possible. Next point is we in Europe need to embrace savings and investment union, meaning it's great to have a stock exchange in Poland and it's great to have a stock exchange in every other country in Europe. But I don't know if you know, in the US, where you have 50 states, can you guess how many stocks markets you have? You have 7. You don't have 50 stock markets in the US. Now, if you have 27 different stock markets in Europe, you don't have the scale. That's very simple. Another example also from this industry, you have clearing houses. In the US, there is only one clearing house for all of the stock exchanges. In Europe, you have 27. And the list goes on. So this is even talking about just the architecture of the financial system. And the last thing I want to talk, and here I'm going to break my promise, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at the European Investment Fund, is we are, there's a typo, well done, Kamil, and we are pushing for a thing called European Tech Championship Initiative. The European Tech Championship Initiative is a project where we see that a number of very large, successful startups from Europe struggle with late-stage financing. Late-stage financing think they need to secure investment of, say, 100 million euros. In US, you have 7 times as much large venture capital funds that can actually provide that financing than in Europe. So this is one of the reasons why some of the unicorns emigrate from Europe to the US. Case in point, anybody uses Bolt? Nobody uses Bolt for taxi? Really, you don't know what Bolt is? Okay, somebody uses, yes. So Bolt was a European startup that had to emigrate to the US because they didn't secure sufficient financing in Europe. So this is what we do. This is a map which shows us the universe of the European Tech Championship Initiative and how many startups we have supported so far. And one of the cases, if you actually zoom in on one of the startups that we have supported, is called DeepL. Anybody knows what DeepL is? Anybody uses DeepL? Yeah? And do you know who created DeepL? There you go. It is a Polish person. Yes. Point is that even these large European, pan-European programs can support startups and technology that is originated from still emerging markets such as Poland. So my closing remarks will be this. Today, I have presented a framework of thinking, of understanding what needs to be done to craft, in my opinion, responsible innovation and technology. I also wanted to convey the following message, that it seems pretty clear that for Europeans, the ethical aspects, the society-related aspects of innovation are more relevant than those in the US. And at the same time, more and more technology and talent is being emigrated from Europe to the US. If we want to be able to defend our values, if we want to be able to defend our technological sovereignty, we need to address a number of internal issues. We need to make sure that we have actually more Europe and not less Europe, because together we stand, divided we fall. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kamil. I think this is a very important perspective for any innovator. We need to understand that any innovations run in some environment, and this perspective really good to present how important it is. So thank you, Kamil. And our last keynote speaker will be Professor Katarzyna Sznajd-Weron. I'm very happy to introduce Professor to the audience. Professor will bring the perspective of science and perspective of society into the discussion. So Professor Sznajd-Weron is a well-known professor from Wrocław University of Science and Technology, professor of Computational Social Science and Statistical Physics. She has 25 years of applied analytical and computational methods to understand how society behaves. Professor is known as well, this is very impressive. She has a model, sorry, that was the word I was looking for. So we have a model which is known as a Sznajd model. So this is very, I think, impressive as well for the audience. Please research. And Professor has more than 1,200 cited over 1,200 times. So very impressive background. I'm very happy to invite to the stage Professor Katarzyna Sznajd-Weron.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me, Yash, here. I was really glad to hear this sentence at the end, that united we stand, divided we fall. And then you mentioned the model, because in fact that was the motto of the model, and it was the whole paper was based on this statement. So great. I don't know if I will be able to. I should use this. Yeah. Okay. Let's try it and let's see. Okay. Great. So yeah, indeed, we heard a lot. Sorry, we heard a lot about trust. And we heard about responsibility, and I was sitting there asking myself, what does it mean to be responsible? And I think that one thing that is very important is to be honest with yourself, which is horribly difficult. Why? Because we have something that is called cognitive dissonance, which means that if we do something different than we think, we feel very uncomfortable. And then we could think, okay, let's change our behavior. But sometimes it's not easy. So we change our way of thinking. What I missed today, and I hope I will give you some flavor of this, is social perspective. I will tell you what I mean by social, but also psychological perspective. It's not that simple to change the way you behave. So I have a question to all of you. You don't have to answer. I even don't know how to answer myself. Is it really about the trust if we think about AI? Do we really trust AI? I don't know. Me, myself, I don't trust. Yet I use it as crazy. So it's not always that you need to trust something to use it. Okay, let me start with much simpler technology. Not AI, just simple keyboard. So this is my opening puzzle. You know this keyboard because you use this every day. Why? Why we use this type of keyboard? Well, like in 1910, somebody designed this keyboard, and it was designed in such a way to prevent jams, like mechanical jams. Because if you have keys that are too close to each other and you hit those keys that are close to each other, then of course if it's mechanical, it will cause jams. But of course now we are not using mechanical keyboards. So in fact, it is not needed. And you could think maybe there is more clever way to design a keyboard. And indeed, somebody came into this idea, Dvorak came into this idea in 1936 to build a keyboard that is more efficient. So as you see, this is a different keyboard. And I try to type on this keyboard one sentence, and this is the sentence. So innovation is not just about building better technologies, but about how they are adopted with the complex social systems. And you see our QWERTY keyboard, and you see the Dvorak keyboard. So it's really spread out. You need to use different rows, and with Dvorak it's very simple. So it seems it's much more efficient, yet very few people use Dvorak keyboard. So it's not only about efficiency, it's also not about trust, because here, I mean, you don't need really to trust the keyboard. I mean, it will not kill you for sure. But it's about convenience. You used to use something, so of course it's very difficult to use something different. And Yash knows when you enter my office, I have my blackboard, the sentence, keep it simple. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that this is one of the main issues, that we want things to be simple. AI is very simple to use. One was launched, everybody could use it, play with this. You didn't need any special skills. Of course, it can be harmful, and you can realize like after a minute that maybe they can steal your data, the private data, but in fact you share your private data on your social media anyway. So it is not that simple. So my perspective is that, of course, adoption is not a technical process, it is a social process, but what I mean by social process, we are humans, of course, so we have to take into account our psychological issues, but also social issues in a sense that we interact with other people. So if you think about innovation, I was trying to think what come into my mind when I think about innovation. Of course, uncertainty, and then trust, of course, but also network structure, how we interact with others, social influence, peer pressure, the switching codes like for Dvorak keyboard, and so on. So there are many issues. And we specifically, in our department of computational social science, focus on several of them. So one is social network. You see two social networks here. There are two companies, like one large company, about 50,000 people, and the second like middle company. So of course the scale is different, the size of the system is different, but also the structure itself of the network is different, and this structure can influence different social processes that come here in various ways. The second thing that we are focused on in our group is so-called intention behavior gap, and I started with this. So sometimes you have good intention, okay. From tomorrow, I will run every day, or from tomorrow, I will not eat sweets, or from tomorrow, I will not buy another jacket. I don't need another jacket. Yet I'm still doing this, especially with jackets, I have problems. So we have some intentions, but then to make it as a behavior, it's not that simple. And the most dangerous thing, I believe, in this case, is because of this cognitive dissonance, sometimes you start to think differently. So you start to think, okay, in the end, I segregate my trash, but they put it everywhere in the same place. So I don't need to care about this. Or, they say that running is healthy, but others say, and then it's uncertainty, of course, involved, that maybe it's not good for my knees. And of course, it's easier not to run, so I'll not run. So some of you are probably running and you enjoy it, but I hate it, so that's fine. Okay. Anyway, so what I'm saying, sometimes you are not doing something, and instead of starting to do something, you try to find excuses, and there are like large psychological theories behind it. So this is really, really difficult. And then another point related to psychology is pluralistic ignorance. So this is the picture. I love the picture because it was prepared by my son. And it is illustration of the great tale of Andersen, the new imperial clothes. So young people probably don't know the tale because I'm asking, and I thought that everybody knows, but it seems that not anybody. Anyway, so thieves came to the emperor and told him, we have a magical cloth, we have magical material, and everybody that sees it means that he is responsible and suited for the position and intelligent and so on. If you don't see it, it means that you are not suited to the position and so on. So immediately what happened, people started to behave like they would see, or they started to verbalize that they see the clothes. And of course, it was nothing there. In the end, it was this huge parade. Imperial went in front of the crowd, naked, and everybody was screaming, oh, what a beautiful clothes. Only one small one small boy shouted, oh, the king is, or the emperor is naked. What happened here is two things. So preference falsification first, so you verbalize something different than you really think because you are afraid of what other will think about you. And the second is that once you start to do this, and once others start to do this, you are completely lost because you don't know what others are thinking. You are in the state of pluralistic ignorance. You think, oh, I believe that king is naked, but it seems that everybody else thinks that king is really like dressed up. we sometimes ignore this. So we ignore the influence of others, but this is damn important, right? We see so many cases in which intelligent people can do something that is completely irrational just because of the peer pressure. And I think it has to be taken into account if you think about adoption to new technologies or new behaviors or whatever innovation is. And the third thing that we are really focused on is polarization that exists. If you introduce something new to the market, it can be technology, it can be some new practice. What you can observe, you can very often observe the strong polarization. And then it's really, really difficult, because even if you give good arguments to these other people, maybe it will be just for them to convince that they are in fact right, which sounds like crazy, but it is what is happening. So sometimes talking about Europe and United States, for example, I was not intending to talk about it because I don't know much, but if you have two societies with different values, with different law, it will not help like this discussion. Sometimes it can be even harmful. The more you discuss, the more you are polarized. So this is also something we take into account, and we try to understand what can influence this. Okay, and in the end, how we do this? We are building agent-based modeling. Somebody is keeping time, so please just give me a sign when I should finish. So we try to understand the social processes and psychological processes, how they influence the society via so-called agent-based models. What is this? I will show you on the simple example in a minute. But like in short, we built artificial society of agents, not AI agents. We call agent just the entity. It can be human, for example. We design how they interact with each other, and then we see how they behave as a society. So I like to present it in such a way. Imagine that you have this group of people, they wear these hats, the blue and red. And let's play the game. It will be not real game, but let's imagine that we play this game. So imagine that we do something like this. So you wear these hats, and then you choose one person. That's the one in the circle. I have always problem with sides. On this side, okay, on this side. And then you choose another tree from this side. And the rule is that if you meet guys with all green hats, you will change your hat from red to green. It sounds like crazy, but in fact what we are doing here, we are doing conformity. Everybody is wearing wide leg jeans, for example, or something like this. So you are changing. The rule, so this is conformity. In this case, in case of unanimity, you can set up different rules, of course. So then, again, you play again the game, you choose a guy again, and then the source of influence, these three guys, and again, they meet, and for example, the rule will be here. If they are not wearing all like red hats, I will stick with my green one. What I'm showing you is not that this is some reality or anything. I'm showing you how you can design the rules. Okay, you can design rules in many ways. You can take into account that those people are different. You can take into account that they have many personal traits and so on. But this is more or less the approach. And then you put it on the computer, of course, and then you simulate the society, and you look what is going on. And I would like to show you one thing only today. So imagine that you have society, and in this case, it was example with wearing or not wearing a mask, so not big technology, but still something that helps us to be protected against some virus. And imagine that somebody told us, or we heard in TV, that it is good to wear a mask. So it occurs that if people are completely disconnected, if they don't interact with each other and they got the message, they got the policy, they will convert immediately. But if they are connected with each other, if they interact with each other, then this external influence from policy, from law, from advertisement, whatever, will be much weaker. It is very difficult then to convert people to the desirable state because they interact with each other, because they influence each other, and the peer pressure is very, very strong. So if you implement a very simple model like this, you already see this, and you see something we call hysteresis. I will not talk about this much, but what is important that you can come to the certain state, but then going back is very, very difficult because of these interactions. So, so I don't know what is in fact the right question. So is the right questions, are we building the right technology, or are we protect ethical issues of our technology that we were discussing today in the morning and afternoon? Or do we understand the society that will be using this technology? And understanding society is not just understanding single human beings, because people interact with each other. And this is my perspective, that these interactions can really be more important than anything else. Okay, this is my last word. So the last thing that I wanted to say, that do we take responsibility for that understanding? I started with responsible is to be honest with yourself. So now, even if we understand something, will you be responsible enough to implement this understanding? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So I think now is one of the very interesting part of this this conference is the open panel. So I would like to first of all thank you for all keynote speeches and warmly invite all of our speakers here on stage. And I have few questions prepared for them, but there are more warm-up questions. Please applause our keynote speakers. Oh, great. So I have few questions prepared, but please think about the questions you have, because it will be very interesting to hear from you. We are here to share the knowledge with you. So please think about the questions you have, and in a few minutes I will encourage you to ask those questions to our panelists. If you will have a question for a specific person, please address it. If you will have a question for panel as well, you can address the question for panel. Please keep brief in your question, so please think about them before you ask. And that would be very nice if you will introduce yourself in one sentence, your name and who you are here, so we know with whom you speak from the audience as well. So, guys, let us start the conversation with the panelists. Does it work? Can you hear me? Or we should just take the mic. Let's take it. Okay, great. Okay, so once again, more lights. Thank you for all the presentations, and let's start the discussion. So I have a first question, Monika, to you. So you started from the ethics, and I think this is a very important part, and this is the part which always is missed when we speak about the inventions. And organizations always try to present we are ethical ones. We think about the ethics and we develop in an ethical way. How often you see this situation where organization says, yes, we are ethical, but in the end there is only marketing and nothing ethical is behind that? Is it
very often? I don't have numbers, so
Yeah.
so you know it's hard to say. I cannot tell you it's like 60% or something, and I'm not going to come up with something, but you know, the issue with values and with ethics is that sometimes you may adhere to just one value, do not harm, for example, and say you're ethical. And in a way you are, but I think sometimes as a society we're expecting more than just saying we as a company are not killing people. Especially when it comes to AI, we should expect more than just that. We should expect some fairness as well and few other things.
So you see any chance that we can push leaders or push the companies more in the way to think about the technology in the ethical way? So
we should, but can we? That's a very different question. I think we should. I think that's in a way on us to expect that and to check and not just believe on what big tech are saying, but actually go and ask. There is a good case, not strictly ethical, but it's about sustainability. Google, was it Google? I think it was Google, published a report about sustainability and how greatly sustainable you are. Of course, a lot of papers, a lot of numbers. I didn't read it, but my colleague who's sitting here, he actually went through that, read it very, very carefully, and the numbers didn't match. Like, it didn't work. But you know, how many people actually read it? And how many people just say, oh, they release a report and they're saying they're sustainable. We do believe them. So I think the opportunity to challenge, to ask, to check, and say, hey, sorry, you said that, but it's not working and it's not true. It's very important. And I think especially in a business, sustainability washing and ethical washing, it's something popular. I mean, at university, and I think you can confirm it, if a student comes with a paper and numbers don't match, or he's quoting the wrong way, I mean, that's wrong. Then right away, the professor, the person who's checking it, go back to you and say, you quoted it wrong, you write it wrong. We don't do it to big tech. We don't do it to the business. We don't going back and telling them, sorry guys, you're saying you're doing that, there is no proof that you're doing that. So I think it's more on the people to actually go and challenge.
I think the institutions are the ones which has the power to push the companies to work more ethical, to value ethics more. We saw that in Kamil, in your presentation, that you focus how the European Union and how the United States work on the same issue. What do you think about that perspective?
So if I may reflect a little bit to what my predecessor just said, and I'm not, contesting anything that you just said. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare at all.
That's fine.
But something that we can see from, so in my job and the job of my colleagues, what we do is we invest in companies, we provide funding for banks, for investment funds, for startups, etc. And when we do these investments, we conduct something which is called due diligence, which means that we want to check, whether this is a viable business, but also whether it fits our public policy goals, and also whether it resonates correctly with ethical standards, ESG, environmental, societal, and governance standards, etc., etc. And one of the things, again, I can't quote statistics, but I see very often, is that there's definitely a degree of bad faith where some companies pretend that they are green or they pretend that they are ethical, etc. But I also believe there's a number of cases where there's lack of standardization of interpretation. What is a green company? What does it actually mean? What does it mean that something is ethical? This is, we can have hour-long philosophical debate about what is ethics, but at some point we need a pragmatic, practical guidelines, which will never be ideal, but something that you can use. And I give you something as an example that I often see. One of the things that we promote as a European body when we have companies and when we have investment funds, and something that I'm personally very passionate about, is female representation. And I mean that females in a given investment company, for instance, they actually have a degree at least of power. And quite often I'm approached by investment companies, and that investment company has, say, 20 employees, and they promote themselves saying that they are supporting women, they are supporting empowerment, and that they, of the 20 people, 60% of the staff is female, which is amazing. But this is not good enough for me, because what I will ask is, okay, but show me what are these females doing in that company? Is this female representation sitting at the investment board, at the investment committee, at the place where you have power and you do investment management decisions? Or these are just secretaries, legal people, you basic support functions. I'm not trying to depreciate the value added of these jobs. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't twist that. But there is a difference in power. And I'm not trying to say they are cheating. For them, their definition of female empowerment is the 60%. So, if you don't have the standard,
then we are playing a little bit with the truth. I mean, we say the 60%, but we do not say the full truth of what is behind. We let the people to think by the stereotypes and we leave the gray zone for the definition on the people side. One thing which come to my mind right now is we talked about the regulated environments, yes? And we talk as well about the innovations. So we know that the innovation from the definition is something which is new. It sometimes is breaking some rules or building the new rules for the environment, for society, for technology. When we have a regulated environment and we have some innovations, how that regulated environment can support innovations? So if we have a definition for everything, if we have said this means that, and someone is coming with a new invention, he needs to fit to these regulations. Is invention still possible in very regulated environment, in your opinion, or it should be filled for unprecise definition or the gray zone where this innovation can be plugged and grow?
Very quickly, because I don't want to take all of it.
Yeah, well,
this will always be an unsolvable problem. But the fact that this is difficult and it is unsolvable doesn't mean that we should not never pursue it. The world is changing. New dimensions are being created. New perspectives are being unveiled. And yes, the old definitions needs to be redefined, for instance. And that's part of life. The question is not whether you put too many of these standardization things. The question is, do you also have the systems to reflect the changes and amend them if you see that the world changed and different interpretations are needed? And here I'll be very honest with you, Europe, I'm a big Europe guy. Yes, I'm pro-Europe in any dimension you can imagine, but we are very slow. One of the things that we struggle with is that once you define something, it stays like this, and for years it's very difficult to redefine this. And this is something that needs to be fixed. But I would see you need to fix that.
So continuous development in the regulation is something which can help innovation as well to grow. So there is no one definition for always. It's one definition for now and another one in next time. Continues this point, I would like to ask Professor, you said about the changing. So all innovations change something, yes? So we saw in your presentation adoption. So we have people, that slide with the people with the red hat and the green hat. When we have an innovation which from the definition should change something, how we can make it stronger? So starting point is people will resist with that. So we will keep the known part. We will not adopt that fast this innovation. Is it something we can do to stronger the innovation to be adopted by the society?
So, okay. There are different examples because what we saw with AI is very different. But in general, there were a lot of studies that shows that if you introduce something new, it should be innovative, but not too much. So there is this nice principle, the most advanced yet acceptable, Maya principle. And indeed, if you see that if you introduce something that is really crazy that people don't understand, usually people will not use it. That's why with AI I said it's a bit different thing, but maybe not so different, because it's not about deep understanding, but it's about, like, you can use it. You just write and you discuss with somebody, so maybe that's why. Anyway, so like in general, this is the principle that you would like to have. So it has to be innovative, but not too much. Not too different what we know already. So
it's very interesting perspective. So innovation, if you are too innovative, there is a big chance that your innovation will fail.
That's what study shows.
Yeah.
That's what study shows, that if it's very innovative, like crazy, you cannot relate it to anything you saw before. You just don't understand it completely and you don't want to use it. That's what study shows. The second thing is, of course, that you need this critical mass, people that will be adopted. You see it, like, if you look at this diffusion curves, you always see that you have this tipping point, and we see it with fashion, we see it with everything. So if something new is coming to the market, or like anywhere, the critical mass helps, which means that if enough people will adopt, then that probably because of peer pressure, because of social interaction, also because then maybe regulation will be introduced because they see that many people already use it. So this critical mass, that's another point. But again, with AI, it was like, I don't know, 1-2 days. And
yeah, it was a crazy technology.
So it's a crazy technology. So it's
maybe everyone was waiting for that. So everyone was waiting for something.
I think it was just so easy to use. I think that was it was so funny and that so easy. Nobody was thinking really deeply about that's the problem also with people.
We have few stones where we can fit our innovation. So one of them is give the people what they want. So they was waiting for something easy and fun.
Yeah, Apple was doing this all the time.
Exactly. Even everything was new, was quickly adopted.
Even you can tell people what they want.
Yes, so they provoke that willing. And of course we have ethics, and we have restrictions or rules where all innovations needs to fit. So maybe we can use as well those for the innovative environment. So we can say ethic is everyone knows ethic, and we want to be ethical. So we can use as a hook for the new innovation. What do you think about that? Is it something what is possible from your perspective, that using the ethics as a stone where the new innovation can be adopted because people knows that and people wants that? So even if something is crazy, ethics can be something which will drive and lead innovation.
If I understand correct, you're saying that, oh, here is an innovation, it's crazy innovation, we don't know what it's going to do, but we're telling you it's ethical.
Yeah.
Interesting. Would you, I'm asking the audience, if someone comes to you with something very new, very crazy, you don't understand it, but tells you, don't worry, it's ethical, what would you do? Who would, go for it? Please raise your hand. You don't understand to know what is it, it looks great, and it's ethical. Who would go for that? 1, 2, 3 people. You get an innovation, it's crazy, it looks good, but no one using the word ethical. And the rest?
This is preference falsification. You cannot trust what people will say.
I just wanted to say that we have very ethical audience here. So.
But the word ethical...
At least we pretend all that we are ethical.
The word ethical convinced you. I think it depends, because as much as I would like to, ethics is not a bargain for every society. There are societies where ethics will be more important, and there are ones where they are not. There would be generations in the same societies for whom ethics will be important, and there will be generation who doesn't care.
So we can group our innovation and address them in the proper way to the proper group.
Yeah, maybe.
What about the restrictions, or what about, Kamil, what about the regulations? Normally they based on something which we assume that people want. So the ethics, the regulation are to build the environment where the innovation can run, but in safe and secured way. So nobody will be hurt, nobody will be punished, we will be protected. Is it something where the innovation, very crazy one, can run using this as a trampoline?
Maybe so to also, if I may, reflect to the previous point, and maybe also about this adoption, because I really like what you said, Ms. Professor, about that the technology, the innovation cannot be too crazy in usage or too out of this world, because then people will not use that. I really like this number of books that actually show the history of Apple, where the first iPhone, which had the touch screen, like 80% of everything within this Apple was not new technology. You know this case, yes? So what Steve Wozniak and what Steve Jobs did, and the full credit for that, is they picked different pieces of technology, like how the touch screen works, etc. And they were thinking about consumer-centric, they had a consumer-centric view, which then allowed to bundle all of these things together, and then this kicked off. So the making this adaptable for clients, and I think ChatGPTs and the other ones are simply so super easy to use, and this is why probably this picked up. And I really recommend to anybody who does not know this, there's YouTube videos also about this, to see the network of different innovation that I don't want to say they stole, but they were inspired by, and then they put it into iPhone. Now, when it comes to, I think the question you were asking, if I understood correctly before, was also about, what if you have different innovation on technology, and one has its ethical label, and another one does not have ethical label, and another one has its unethical, and whether this is relevant for the user. And here you were saying that it's different between even generations, because then the question you have, how do you define ethics exactly between generations, but also between geographies? It's something we have totally different, not totally different, but different enough set of ethics or values between Asia and Europe, between Europe and the Arab world, between Europe and the US. And there was a time where we, when I say we, I mean the European/American world, wanted to impose our values and our way of thinking to all the other places. It didn't work because people think differently in different places. So then this adoption things will be different. But I have some positive thoughts about the next generation. I see that the next generations, when they seek, for instance, investment products, or when they invest into different companies with their pocket money or whatever, they pay attention to some ESG ratings, they pay attention into sustainability news, they pay attention to see if the shoe manufacturer is using child labor somewhere in Asia, etc. This is something that I know my parents were not concerned as much as the Gen Zs. So I think that this is happening.
So maybe let's then try ask our new generation, which is here in the audience. Do you guys have any questions? Do you any points which you would like to raise as a point for the innovation?
Hello. So I would have a question to Professor Sznajd-Weron specifically. In your speech, you mentioned that sometimes, for example, the example you used was a very polarized group where dialogue may not always be the best option, and perhaps it might even worsen the situation. Now this to me stands in contrast to, for example, my personal instinct. When there's conflict, I would like to talk it out. So my question is, how can an average person without an education in this field or specific knowledge be expected to act responsibly or productively? Or maybe even better, how can we get the average person to act in a productive way?
Thank you very much for this question. Very good one, and very important. So indeed, it's contradictory. I mean, it seems like contradictory that you always think that dialogue will help. And sometimes it helps, really. So there are different studies that shows that it can polarize more, but there are studies that can polarize less, and now the answer. So it depends how open you are. If you, for example, if you think about dialogue between two different parties that are really like with very different values, and they don't even try to think that the way the opposite party is thinking, then you are completely lost. Then other discussion will bring nothing. If you try sometimes to behave, and this is our study that we are doing, try sometimes to behave like a devil's advocate. So try to be opposite to your own group and take the perspective of the other. So like shift to the other, then the dialogue can help beautifully. We are doing this with computational models, but also we are collaborating with psychologists that are doing social experiments that, so we call this anti-conformity to your own group can really help to depolarize, and then the discussion can help. So be open and try to think the other side is thinking, not just to convince and that your point of view is the right one.
We have another question.
Hello, good afternoon. I have a question for all participants by 3 separate questions. Could we go with that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my first question is for Professor Sznajd-Weron. You said you don't have to trust technology to use it. But on the other hand, you trust the keyboard when you press H, that it would be H, not G, okay, right? So I don't get your point, and could you...
Yeah, I never said that I trust those people, to be honest. I never said that. Unfortunately, there is click-clack behavior.
You said you don't need to trust a technology to use it. That is your word.
Yeah, that's
I do not understand that, so could you elaborate on that? Because I do not agree with that.
Yeah, okay, of course you can. I believe that many people will not agree with this. What I'm saying that for example, I'm not trusting AI. I don't trust ChatGPT, not at all. Still, I'm using it. Because if something is fun, if something is simple to use, if something is comfortable, saves my time and so on, I just suppress that thought that I have in my mind. Maybe it's not good. Maybe they will steal some of my data. Maybe something. There is very strong psychological phenomena called cognitive dissonance, and the need to reduce it. So when something is just comfortable for you or something is fun, you will try to suppress your bad thoughts about this. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you don't trust something, still you are doing this.
Sure.
Even with people.
But if you suppress trust, you're basically also suppressing the responsibility.
That's another story.
Right.
That's why I asked
talking about the other story, responsibility that was covered in the presentation of Mr. Pruchnik, I thought, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you posed the sentiment that Bolt should be founded here locally, and we were unable to found it because of our lack of unification in funding and so on and so on. Is it more or less the sentiment you presented?
Sorry, can you, I didn't...
You referred to Bolt as the company, and you used this example as something that was not able to be founded in Europe, and they had to move to US because we are not financially unified as a market to fund it, for example. Am I right in this kind of sentiment you presented? Okay. So my question for you, do you think that funding Bolt was responsible in terms of how Uber local transportation itself? That's my question to you about the responsibility of funding such ideas, because it's a question of historical approach. In Middle Ages till, let us say, 18th century, innovation was used as a pejorative word in order to dismiss actions in religion and in civilization, and something new, something disruptive, against tradition. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and positive aspect of innovation happened, right? Oh, innovation is pushing things forward, it's good. So I would say it was never neutral, frankly speaking. Maybe today it's neutral because we see both sides, and neutrality comes from basically two sides of the spectrum, and we are basically looking at the middle. But my question is to the last quote you said. I cannot remember it fully, but the question was, you can make any kind of system, but could you
Anyone can create a system, but very few can create one that is responsible, ethical, robust, and compliant.
And my question is, don't you think that systems are created to be so powerful, of course with power comes responsibility, but unfortunately that they don't have to be robust, they don't have to be ethical, and they don't have to follow the other characteristics, because they, in the realm of this pushed optimism, they are treated as, for example, saviors of the industry or something like that.
So let me jump.
So just these three questions. The question about trust is basically answered. The question of responsibility, whether it's responsibility to found such startups that disrupt the local flow of transportation and the local flow of wealth, and also whether it's probably the reason why we are able to, maybe this is the time we are living in, that we are able to produce such systems regardless of whether they are ethical and so on and so on.
Let our speakers to answer. So,
very shortly, yes, we are living in a time where any system can be created, where the system that is not ethical can be created, where the system that is not robust can be created. That's the whole point. That's the time we are living in, when something that can basically kill us can be created. But I think that the whole point is to create something that is responsible, not something that is created for sake of being created. So I would agree. We live in a time where we can create systems that are unethical, not aligned to laws and regulation in a given place, that are not really reliable. And the fourth thing, sorry, I at the moment I forgot. I agree, that's possible. The question is, do we want that?
yeah, exactly.
And why it's possible, maybe that's the question. Why we allow for such systems to exist.
So
Exactly.
maybe let Kamil as well answer the part which was addressed to.
So here my response is representing my personal view, not the views of the institution that I am representing. And as far as I'm personally concerned, yes, it was ethical from the perspective of the founders and from the perspective of the society. This is my personal opinion, to fund, to grow and expand such companies such as Bolt and Uber and other ones like that. That's the normal, that's maybe harsh, but it's the normal course of nature and technology that you have these things. And I think there's a sentiment in Europe, unfortunately there is, some people are afraid of different things and they want to regulate to prevent it. It is happening there. And for instance, when ChatGPT exploded, this was in the Hoffman book also, but also this was in the US also happening. Some of high-level politicians in the US and in Europe were saying, please stop developing these language models for the next 6 months because we are so afraid about this, please don't do that. Yeah? It doesn't work like that. Innovation will not wait. But then this is where you need to have the right approach to create the institutions, the system, the balance and checks. And in my personal view, this is Kamil Pruchnik world, it is a fantasy, I'm using this word on purpose, a fantasy to expect that this will be only regulated by consumers. Yeah. No, the asymmetric information is too large. We need institutions, as imperfect as they are, but we need these institutions and these interventions to balance, create some checks, fix unequal distribution of wealth, if we think this is an extreme, for instance,
create protection for workers that may not find it easy to find work if you have these disruption technologies, etc., etc. But this is a separate debate which can be endless. But this is my world, this is my view.
And even organizations, we can see even in OpenAI, they have his own department which is taking this risk. They protect that ChatGPT is running in some rules. So as we discussed about the ethic, from one perspective, government gives some restrictions, but even the organization which has some level of level of intelligence, let's say, they work in itself in their own boundaries, which prevent the product to be unethical. So I know personally the people from ChatGPT, from OpenAI, which are working on the safety secure department. So when you ask ChatGPT how to build a bomb, they will not answer you. I mean, you can find a way.
Now, because we know in past it did.
Yes, in past it is.
And now it still can if you know how to ask.
Yes, exactly, if you know how to ask. That's why we need another regulation sometimes to be more forcing more the organizations, but self-awareness of the organizations from some particular point builds this ethical point in the organization. I think the time is running. Do we have a time for last question or no? Guys? People waiting outside, they should enter. Okay. Dear guests, thanks a lot for your keynote speeches. Thanks a lot for this panel. Audience, thanks a lot for the questions. I think that was very constructive and very interesting panel. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Just wait with me for two or three more minutes, yeah, to conclude the conference. Let's thank our moderator, Pawel, as well, with a huge round of applause. Thank you, Pawel. Okay, just to quickly conclude, I have to, of course, after a lot of things that have happened, I should thank everybody. First, there were about 50 speakers, including master students, PhD students, keynote speakers, presenters. There were 50 speakers in 2.5 days. So everybody did an amazing, amazing job. So I know some of them are here, but some of them are not. But I would still like to request you all to thank them with a huge round of applause. I also have a lot of my craft team to thank. I have not been able to, how we should put it, call them on stage and facilitate them, but I will definitely do that. We have discussed with the dean that we will have an organizing ceremony with them, but some of them are here and I would like you all to put your hands together for them. Magdalena Maćkowiak, is she here? No. Emilia Łukasik. Patrick Magenda. Jakub Beben. Maximilian Podzik. Timon Gajewski. Betul Ungurun. Zuzana Lis. Not here? Okay. Sofia, I'm sorry, she's right there. I cannot pronounce her second name. Nicole Kumura. Damian Gura. Alexandra Dugonska. Hanna Rojak. She left. And Alexandra Drozdowska. This last Alexandra was also the lead for the whole Craft Inspiration Conference, so I think she deserves an extra round of applause. Thank you. There are two other people that I would really like to thank. One is Christina Kardach. Where are you? Oh, right there. She's waiting for us. Yeah. She has been running around for like a week. And then Paulina Muszyńska. She's the head of Startup Wrocław. She is an advisory board member of Craft, and yet she was doing everything from taking photos to carrying banners. So thank you so much. Right. So to Do I have anything else to say? I do. Okay, there are two very interesting events if you would like to attend. One is the Cassini Hackathon, which is a European Space Agency sponsored hackathon, which is happening on 24th, 26th of April. It will happen in our SKS. So if anybody would like to participate, it's actually free, and it happens in 11 countries at the same time. Yeah, and this is the 11th edition. So if anybody would like to participate, you're still welcome to make some teams and go there. It's really, really fun to participate. Another hackathon that is going to happen, which could be useful, is called Crafting Future Cities. Craft is not official partner, but I was a part of the organizing team, and I slipped in the word craft, and they did not realize that it was coming from craft. So it was kind of a sneaky innovation. Which is organized by the Unite Widening Project, which is led by Professor Agata Klos-Rosyńska, who is from Faculty of Management as well. So I invite you, if you would like to participate in any of these two hackathons, I really recommend. Both of them are free participation. They are happening at our campus, and I think it's valuable information for all of you. Once again, thanks to all of the partners, Capgemini, Startup Wrocław, Arav, Hampton, Top Association of Innovators, our community partners, KN Solvero, Steak, Luz, Radio Luz, University of Wrocław, and International Sociological Association, and also Aquapark, who gave away some nice stuff for people who won the Craft 180 competition and participated in it. All right, so we come to an end of this marathon, at least for the ones we were organizing. So it was a really marathon for us. Lots of nice things, lots of arguments, debates, lots of fun, sadness, fights, everything dials down to this. So I would like to thank you all for participating. Thanks to all the team for being as a part of a team to organize this. And we have some interesting things for next year, which was just discussed with James and me, how like 1 hour before the seminar. So hopefully we can bring additional value to you sometime in the future. Thank you, and let's join for a group photograph, and then we will say bye-bye, because musicians are waiting with all the instruments to get in, so we have to be quick. Thank you so much once again.
Is this still on? It's still on. So there's one thing we are missing, is we've all said thank you to loads and loads of people, but there's one person who didn't get a big clap full for himself. So can we all put our hands together for Yash, please?
Guys, join us on the photo. You will have something to share on the Facebook and LinkedIn, so join us.